The assembly will come to order. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Assemblywoman Anderson. Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod. Assemblywoman Black. Assemblywoman Brown May. Assemblywoman Carlton. Assemblywoman Cohen. Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblywoman Dickman. Assemblywoman Duran. Assemblywoman Duran. Assemblyman Ellison. Assemblyman Flores. Assemblywoman Gonzalez. Assemblywoman Garlow. Assemblyman Hafen. Assemblywoman Hanson. Assemblywoman Hardy. Assemblywoman Howdigi. Assemblywoman Kasama. Assemblywoman Krasner. Assemblyman Levitt. Assemblywoman Martinez. Assemblywoman Marzola. Assemblyman Matthews. Assemblyman MacArthur. Assemblywoman Brittany Miller. Assemblyman C.H. Miller. Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Assemblywoman Nguyen. Assemblyman O'Neill. Assemblyman Orentlicker. Assemblywoman Peters. Assemblyman Roberts. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Assemblywoman Thomas. Assemblywoman Titus. Assemblywoman Tolles. Assemblywoman Torres. Assemblyman Watts. Assemblyman Wheeler. Assemblyman Yeager. Speaker Frierson.
Here, Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May the record reflect that all members are present.
There are 42 members present. There's a quorum. The assembly will please rise for the prayer by Rabbi Benjamin Zober of the Temple Sinai in Reno.
O guardian of life,
keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our land be sound in body and spirit. Baruch atah Adonai shomeat tefillah. Blessed are you, Adonai, who hearkens to prayer. Amen. Amen.
Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order Business 2, reading and approval of the journal.
Carson City, Friday, April 9,
Mr. Speaker.
2021.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to dispense with further reading of the journal and authorize the Speaker and Chief Clerk to make necessary corrections and additions.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Go to Order Business 4, reports to Standing Committee.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Commerce and Labor, to which will refer to Assembly Bills 418, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation amended due pass as amended. Senator Howdigi, Chair. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Education, to which will refer to Assembly Bills 19. 415 has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation due pass. Shannon Bilbray Axelrod, Chair. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Growth and Infrastructure, to which was referred Assembly Bill 412, has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with the recommendation due pass. Danielle Monroe Moreno, Chair. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Natural Resources, to which will refer to Assembly Bills 6, 31, 34, 40. Assembly Joint Resolution 2 has had the same under consideration and begs leave to report the same back with recommendation and due pass as amended. Howard Watts, Chair.
We'll go to Order Business 8, motions, resolutions, and notices.
Assembly Joint Resolution Number 1, introduced by Assemblywoman Titus, proposing to amend the Nevada Constitution to revise terms relating to persons with certain conditions for whose benefit certain public institutions are supported by the state. Resolved that this resolution becomes effective upon passage. End of resolution.
Are there any amendments to the resolution?
I have amendment number 17, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services.
Assemblywoman Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt amendment number 17 to Assembly Joint Resolution 1.
Assemblywoman Nguyen has moved that the same adopt amendment number 17 to Assembly Joint Resolution number 1. Remarks.
Amendment number 17 adds persons who have an intellectual or developmental disability to the description of persons who benefit from institutions fostered and supported by the state, and adds certain primary joint sponsors and non-primary joint sponsors to the resolution.
Any further remarks? There being none, all those in favor of adopting amendment number 17 to Assembly Joint Resolution number 1, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the resolution?
There are none.
The resolution is ordered to the resolution file.
Assembly Joint Resolution 7, introduced by Assemblyman Bilbray Axelrod et al., Senators Brooks et al., urging the Congress of the United States to pass the National Infrastructure Bank Act of 2020. Resolved that this resolution becomes effective upon passage. End of resolution.
Are there any amendments to the resolution?
I have Amendment 160, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Growth and Infrastructure.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt Amendment 160 to Assembly Joint Resolution 7.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 160 to Assembly Joint Resolution number 7. Remarks?
The amendment adds one cosigner to the measure.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 160 to Assembly Joint Resolution number 7, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the resolution?
There are none.
The resolution order to resolution file.
Assembly Joint Resolution number 10, introduced by Assemblyman Watts et al., Senators Harris and Neal, proposing to amend the ordinance of the Nevada Constitution and the Nevada Constitution to remove language authorizing the use of slavery and involuntary servitude as a criminal punishment. Resolved that this resolution becomes effective upon passage. End of resolution.
Are there any amendments to the resolution?
I have Amendment number 189, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections.
Assemblywoman Miller.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to amend 189 to Assembly Joint Resolution 10.
Assemblywoman Miller has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 189, Assembly Joint Resolution number 10. Remarks?
Yes, this Amendment 189 adds a cosigner to the bill as a primary joint sponsor.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 189, Assembly Joint Resolution number 10, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the resolution?
There are none.
The resolution is ordered to resolution file.
Assembly Joint Resolution 10 of the 80th session, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, proposing to amend the Nevada Constitution to prospectively increase the required minimum wage paid to employees. Resolved that this resolution becomes effective on July 1, 2024. End of resolution.
Are there any amendments to the resolution?
There are none.
Remarks? Assemblywoman Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Joint Resolution number 10 of the 80th session proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution to set the minimum wage at $12 per hour worked beginning July 1st of 2024, regardless of whether the employer provides health benefits to employees. The resolution proposes to remove the annual alignment of the minimum wage and instead provides that if at any time the federal minimum wage is greater than $12 per hour worked, the state minimum wage is increased to the amount established for the federal minimum wage. Finally, this resolution proposes to allow the legislature to establish a minimum wage that is greater than the hourly rate as set forth in the Constitution. The effective date of this resolution was approved by the This resolution was approved by the 80th session of the legislature in 2019. If approved in identical form during the 2021 legislative session, the proposal will be submitted to the voters for the final approval or disapproval at the 2022 general election. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any further remarks? There being none, Chief Clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 26 ayes, 16 nays. The bill having received a constitutional majority declared passed. The resolution is ordered transmitted to the Senate.
Notice of exemption, April 12, 2021. The Fiscal Analysis Division, pursuant to Joint Standing Rule 14.6, has determined the eligibility for exemption of Assembly Bills 42, 340, 365. Sir Kaufman, Fiscal Analysis Division.
Go to Order Business 11, second reading, an amendment.
Assembly Bill 2, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs and Activating Public Bodies, removing the prohibition against gubernatorial appointees serving simultaneously on more than one board, commission, or similar body, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 57, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs.
Assemblyman Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 57 to Assembly Bill 2.
Assemblyman Flores moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 57 to Assembly Bill 2. Remarks?
Mr. Speaker, the amendment limits the number of allowed simultaneous gubernatorial appointments to 3 boards and deletes the conforming changes relating to the Sagebrush Ecosystem Council and the Land Use Planning Advisory Council.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 57 to Assembly Bill 2, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 14, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs and Act relating to emergency management, revising requirements regarding the frequency of meetings of the Nevada Resilience Advisory Committee, the Nevada Tribal Emergency Coordinating Council, and the State Disaster Identification Coordination Committee, revising provisions relating to the reporting by a provider of health care of certain information regarding the treatment of certain persons to the State Disaster Identification Coordination Committee, revising the duties of the State Disaster Identification Coordination Committee, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 7, end of Section 7, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 22, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs.
Assemblyman Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 22 to Assembly Bill 14.
Assemblyman Flores has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 22 to Assembly Bill 14. Remarks?
The amendment provides that the State Disaster Identification Coordination Committee may meet at the call of the chair as frequently as required to perform its duties, but not less than once each calendar year.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 22 to Assembly Bill 14, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 17, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, and Act relating to convicted persons, eliminating the distinction between an honorable discharge and a dishonorable discharge from probation or parole, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 7, end of Section 7, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment number 71, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 71 to Assembly Bill 17.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 71 to Assembly Bill 17. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment revises the reporting requirements that the Division of Parole and Probation and of the Department of Public Safety is required to submit to the Nevada Sentencing Commission.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 71 to Assembly Bill 17, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 21, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs and Act relating to confidential information, authorizing a person for whom a fictitious address is issued by the Division of Child and Family Services of the Department of Health and Human Services to request a county recorder or county assessors to maintain certain personal information in a confidential manner, revising the personal information that must be maintained in a confidential manner when such a person is a registered voter, authorizing such a person to request the Department of Motor Vehicles display an alternate address on the person's driver's license, commercial driver's license, or identification card, and providing other matters properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 7, end of Section 7, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 58, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs.
Assemblyman Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 58 to Assembly Bill 21.
Assemblyman Flores has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 58 to Assembly Bill 21. Remarks?
The amendment requires a person from whom a fictitious address has been issued to provide proof to the county assessor or county recorder, and 2, provides that the Division of Child and Family Services may verify the fictitious address when requested by a county assessor or recorder.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 58 to Assembly Bill 21, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 23, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary and Act relating to criminal procedure, revising the procedure for the commitment of certain criminal defendants whom the court finds to be incompetent to the custody of the Administrator of the Division of Public and Behavioral Health of the Department of Health and Human Services, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment number 72, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 72 to Assembly Bill 23.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 72 to Assembly Bill 23. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment does 2 things. First, in Section 1, it revises the time allowed for the Division of Public and Behavioral Health to complete a comprehensive risk assessment from a reasonable time to within 40 calendar days after receipt of the request. Number 2, it allows the court to grant DTBH a continuance to complete a comprehensive risk assessment upon a showing of good cause.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 72 to Assembly Bill 23, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 25, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to criminal procedure authorizing a forensic facility to transport or request assistance from law enforcement in transporting a person on conditional release to the forensic facility under certain circumstances and providing other matters properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have amendment number 73, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 73 to Assembly Bill 25.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 73 to Assembly Bill 25. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment does three things. First, in Section 1, the must is changed to a may regarding law enforcement taking a person in protective custody. Number 2, it changes from 10 days to 3 days when the court must hold a hearing regarding a person's conditional release. And number 3, it allows a hearing to be continued up to 10 days upon agreement by both parties.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 73 to Assembly Bill 25 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
The bill is ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 28, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs, an act relating to state purchasing, imposing an inverse preference on certain bidders for state purchasing contracts and providing the matters properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 6, end of Section 6, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
The bill is ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 32, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to motor vehicles, revising provisions relating to the filing of a civil action regarding the towing or immobilization of a motor vehicle and providing other matters properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, end of bill.
Are there amendments to the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 75, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 75 to Assembly Bill 32.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 75 to Assembly Bill 32. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment clarifies calendar days in subsection 2A of the bill and also provides that written notice is sent by the owner of a facility where towed vehicles are stored to the registered owner of any vehicle towed to the facility.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 75 to Assembly Bill 32 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
The bill is ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 60, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to witnesses making provisions of a contract or settlement agreement that prohibit or restrict a party to the contract or settlement agreement from testifying at judicial or administrative proceedings concerning criminal conduct or sexual harassment void and unenforceable under certain circumstances and providing other matters properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment 79, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 79 to Assembly Bill 60.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 79 to Assembly Bill 60. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment adds additional protected classes to the bill, including race, religion, color, national origin, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, ancestry, familial status, age or sex, or retaliation for the reporting of such discrimination.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 79 to Assembly Bill 60 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
The bill is ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 63, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs, an act relating to local financial administration, authorizing a local government to use money from a certain fund to mitigate the effects of certain emergencies and providing other matters properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, end of bill.
Are the amendments to the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment number 23, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs.
Assemblyman Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 23 to Assembly Bill 63.
Assemblyman Flores has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 23 to Assembly Bill 63. Remarks?
Mr. Speaker, the amendment revises the definition of emergency for the purpose of establishing a fund to stabilize the operation of a local government.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 23 to Assembly Bill 63 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bill is ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 64, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to crimes changing the penalties for certain unlawful acts relating to preventing or dissuading certain persons from testifying or producing evidence, increasing the penalties for certain unlawful acts relating to preventing, dissuading, hindering, or delaying certain persons from reporting a crime, commencing prosecution, or causing arrest, revising provisions concerning soliciting a child for prostitution, increasing and creating civil penalties for certain unlawful acts relating to customer customers who engage in and solicit for prostitution, revising provisions relating to certain unlawful acts relating to advertising for prostitution, increasing penalties, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
Members to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have amendment number 80 proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 80 to Assembly Bill 64.
Assemblyman Yeager has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 80 to Assembly Bill 64. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment deletes Sections 1, 2, and 4 of the bill. It also adds a new Section 2.5, providing that the Attorney General has concurrent jurisdiction with the district attorneys in this state to prosecute violations of facilitating sex trafficking and engaging in prostitution or solicitation for prostitution. Finally, it revises in Section 3 the definition of the crime of soliciting a child for prostitution.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 80, Assembly Bill 64, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
The bill is ordered as general file.
Assembly Bill 75, introduced by the Committee on Natural Resources, an act relating to measurement standards, establishing field reference standards and transfer standards as additional measurement standards, creating a new rebuttable presumption relating to field reference standards, requiring the state sealer of consumer equitability to make available to all users of field reference standards and transfer standards certain calibration and certification capabilities, requiring the state sealer of consumer equitability to adopt certain regulations for field reference standards and transfer standards, removing the requirement that the state sealer of consumer equitability establish requirements for information relating to open dating of packaged food, revising certain rebuttable presumptions relating to weights, measures, and weighing or measuring devices, and providing other means properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 11, end of Section 11, end of bill.
All right, members to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment 19 proposed by the Assembly Committee on Natural Resources.
Assemblyman Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Amendment 19 to Assembly Bill 75.
Assemblyman Watts has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 19 to Assembly Bill 75. Remarks?
Thank you. This amendment removes the reference of 2020 edition from Section 4 of the bill and replaces it with as adopted by reference by regulation of the State Sealer of Consumer Equitability in the Division of Consumer Equitability of the State Department of Agriculture.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopt Amendment 19 to Assembly Bill 75 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
The bill is ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 76, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs, an act relating to veterans, authorizing the Director of the Department of Veteran Services to establish and operate programs to provide adult day health care to veterans in certain circumstances, eliminating obsolete requirements concerning the location of veterans' homes, and providing other matters properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
All right, members to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
The bill is ordered as general file.
Assembly Bill 89, introduced by Assemblyman Titus and Watts, an act relating to wildlife, authorizing the Board of Wildlife Commissioners to establish a program which authorizes a person to transfer his or her tag to hunt a big game mammal to a qualified organization to use for use by certain persons, and providing other matters properly in thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 5, end of Section 5, end of bill.
All right, amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment number 37, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Natural Resources.
Assemblyman Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of Amendment number 37 to Assembly Bill 89.
Assemblyman Watts has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 37 to Assembly Bill 89. Remarks?
Thank you. This amendment does two things. It provides that a qualified organization is a nonprofit organization that demonstrates in its application, among other things, that it provides opportunities to engage in various experiences to a person who has a disability or life-threatening medical condition, or provides opportunities to engage in various experiences to a person who is 16 years of age or younger, and provides that extenuating circumstance includes death.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 37 to Assembly Bill 89 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
This bill is ordered as general file.
Assembly Bill 100, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs, an act related to wildfires, authorizing the state forester fire warden to enter into a cooperative agreement with federal, state, and local agencies to create a fire board of directors, revising the duties of the state forester fire warden, creating the wildland fire protection program, authorizing the Commissioner of Insurance to create an insurance incentive program related to wildfires, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada represented in Senate and Assembly to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 10, end of Section 10, end of bill.
Are there any members of Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 107, introduced by the Assemblyman Yeager, an act relating to civil actions revising the procedure for determining whether a person may prosecute or defend a civil action without paying costs and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are there any members of Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 81, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 81 to Assembly Bill 107.
Assemblyman Yeager's moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 81 to Assembly Bill 107. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment adds language referring to an unsworn declaration under the penalty of perjury. It provides that the court, based on its review of a person's application, allow a person to commence or defend an action without costs. It provides great criteria for the court to use when considering applications. And finally, it revises the effective date.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 81 to Assembly Bill 107 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further members of the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 111, introduced by Assemblyman Frierson et al., an act relating to peace officers, revising provisions relating to the Executive Director of the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
All right, members of Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment number 59, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Government Affairs.
Assemblyman Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 59 to Assembly Bill 111.
Assemblyman Flores moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 59 to Assembly Bill 111. Remarks?
The amendment adds 2 members to the Post Commission, 1 appointed each the Majority Leader of the Senate and the Speaker of the Assembly, and 2 requires the Governor, the Majority Leader of the Senate, and the Speaker of the Assembly to consider the racial, gender, and ethnicity diversity of the Commission when making this appointment.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 59 to Assembly Bill 111 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 118, introduced by Assemblyman Bilbert Axelrod et al., an act relating to motor vehicles, revising provisions relating to the transportation of children in motor vehicles and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
All right, amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment 56, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Growth and Infrastructure.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 56 to Assembly Bill 118.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno has moved the Assembly adopt Amendment 56 to Assembly Bill 118. Remarks?
The amendment adds the requirement that a child less than 2 years of age generally be secured in a rear-facing child restraint system in the back seat of a motor vehicle.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 56 to Assembly Bill 118 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 121, introduced by Assemblywoman Cohen, an act relating to elections, requiring the Secretary of State to allow an elector with a disability to register to vote and a registered voter with a disability to request and cast an absent ballot using the system of approved electronic transmission established for certain uniformed military and overseas voters, setting forth certain requirements for such an elector or registered voter to use the system of approved electronic transmission, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 13, end of Section 13, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have Amendment 33, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections.
Assemblywoman Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 33 to Assembly Bill 121.
Assemblywoman Miller has moved the Assembly adopt Amendment 33 to Assembly Bill 121. Remarks?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, it revises the deadlines to register and vote in the Federal Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act by allowing for same-day voter registration as provided to other voters in Nevada and authorizing receipt of ballots before close of the polls on the day of the election. It also amends to provide that a person with a disability may also use the system of approved electronic transmission to register to vote, request an absentee ballot, and to cast an absentee ballot until the polls close on Election Day.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 33 to Assembly Bill 121 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 138, introduced by Assemblywoman Martinez, an act relating to public assistance, revising provisions relating to the eligibility of certain convicted persons for public assistance and providing other matters properly thereto. The people's state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
I have amendment number 35, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services.
Assemblywoman Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment Number 35 to Assembly Bill 138.
Assemblywoman Wynn's moved. The Assembly adopt Amendment 35 to Assembly Bill 138. Remarks?
Yes, Amendment 35 removes the provisions that make a person who has been convicted of a felony drug offense ineligible for TANF and SNAP benefits in the state, thereby authorizing such a convicted person to receive such benefits. It also adds certain senators and assembly members as co-sponsors.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 35 to Assembly Bill 138 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 147, introduced by Assemblywoman Wynn, an act relating to counties authorizing the Board of County Commissioners to create by ordinance the office of County Council, providing for the appointment of a County Council, establishing the qualifications of a County Council, authorizing the County Council to appoint deputies and certain other staff, setting forth the powers and duties of a County Council, revising the responsibilities of the District Attorney when the office of County Council is created, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people's state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 139, end of Section 139, end of bill.
Are the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 157, introduced by Assemblyman Monroe Moreno et al., Senators Harris and Brooks, an act relating to civil liability, authorizing a person who is a victim of certain discriminatory conduct relating to an incident involving a peace officer to bring a civil action under certain circumstances and providing other matters properly thereto. The people's state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 85, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 85 to Assembly Bill 157.
Assemblyman Yeager's moved. The Assembly adopt Amendment 85 to Assembly Bill 157. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment adds in Section 1 the language "without reasonable cause" regarding a person who may bring a civil action for damages. It also adds a co-sponsor to the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 85 to Assembly Bill 157 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 171, introduced by the Committee on Natural Resources, an act relating to natural resources, providing certain protections for a certain population of Rocky Mountain junipers, providing penalty and providing other matters properly thereto. The people's state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Are the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have amendment number 108, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Natural Resources.
Assemblyman Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment Number 108 to Assembly Bill 171.
Assemblyman Watts has moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 108 to Assembly Bill 171. Remarks?
Thank you. The amendment provides that Indian tribes are exempt from the provisions of this bill, whether the Indian tribe is native to Nevada or not.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 108 to Assembly Bill 171 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 189, introduced by Assemblywomen Gorlo et al., Senators Canizaro et al., and act relating to Medicaid, requiring, to the extent authorized by federal law, the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services to include in the state plan for Medicaid presumptive Medicaid eligibility for certain pregnant women and providing other matters properly thereto. The people's state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Are the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have amendment number 36, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services.
Assemblywoman Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 36 to Assembly Bill 189.
Assemblywoman Wynn's moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 36 to Assembly Bill 189. Remarks?
Amendment 36 expands coverage for pregnant women whose household income is between 165% and 200% of the federal poverty line. It also prohibits the imposition of a requirement that a pregnant woman must reside in the United States for a prescribed period of time before enrolling in Medicaid, and expands Medicaid coverage from 60 days to 12 months following childbirth.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 36 to Assembly Bill 189 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 202, introduced by Assemblyman Yeager, an act relating to gaming, revising provisions relating to the registration of a qualified organization to operate a charitable lottery or charitable game and providing other matters properly thereto. The people's state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a
I
whole?
have Amendment 88, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 88 to Assembly Bill 202.
Assemblyman Yeager's moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 88 to Assembly Bill 202. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment provides that a qualified organization that offers prizes less than $100,000 annually must register and pay the annual $10 fee with the Nevada Gaming Control Board just once per year.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 88 to Assembly Bill 202 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 206, introduced by Assemblyman Levitt et al., an act relating to education requiring that certain pupils enrolled for full-time in a program of distance education be included in the count of pupils for apportionment purposes, providing that certain pupils whose parents or guardians are members of the armed forces of the United States are eligible to enroll in a program of distance education, and providing otherwise properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 214, introduced by Assemblywoman Considine, an act relating to sexual assault, revising the definition of sexual assault by replacing gendered language with gender-neutral language and providing otherwise properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment 90, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Assembly adopt Amendment 90 to Assembly Bill 214.
Assemblyman Yeager's moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 90 to Assembly Bill 214. Remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment deletes the language "that person" and replaces it with "themselves" in Section 1 of the bill, and the amendment also adds a co-sponsor to the bill.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 90 to Assembly Bill 214 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 216, introduced by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act relating to Medicaid, requiring the state plan for Medicaid to include coverage for certain cognitive assessment and care planning services, and providing other measures properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
I have Amendment number 65, proposed by the Assembly Committee on Health and Human Services.
Assemblywoman Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the Assembly adopt Amendment 65 to Assembly Bill 216.
Assemblywoman Wynn moved that the Assembly adopt Amendment 65 to Assembly Bill 216. Remarks?
Yes, Amendment 65 revises certain terms to ensure self-reporting patients or caregivers are not precluded from cognitive assessment and care planning services, and it aligns the definition of cognitive impairment with medical terminology and excludes from this definition any condition with temporary or reversible effects.
Any further remarks? All those in favor of the Assembly adopting Amendment 65 to Assembly Bill 216 signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. Any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 236, introduced by Assemblyman Farrison, Alice Senators Canizaro et al., and act relating to the Attorney General, revising provisions governing the qualifications for the office of Attorney General and providing other measures properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 258, introduced by Assemblywoman Bill Bright Axelrod, and act relating to libraries, revising provisions governing the duties of the trustees of consolidated library districts and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
The bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 302, introduced by Assemblyman Summers Armstrong et al., and act relating to legislative measures authorizing the Nevada Commission on Minority Affairs to request the drafting of not more than 2 legislative measures for each regular session of the legislature and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 304, introduced by Assemblyman Frierson, and act relating to law enforcement, revising provisions governing the standards for programs of continuing education for peace officers and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Bills ordered general file.
Assembly Bill 308, introduced by Assemblyman Frierson, and act relating to property, revising provisions relating to late fees, revising certain definitions used in the Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, Act, revising provisions relating to notices of increases in rent and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 15, end of Section 15, end of vote.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 366, introduced by Assemblywoman Tolles, and relating to mental health, exempting recordings of certain training activities from requirements concerning the retention, maintenance, and disclosure of healthcare records, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 6, end of Section 6, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Bill ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 390, introduced by the Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections, and act relating to elections requiring notice of a contest of an election to be provided to a candidate whose election is being contested, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 392, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, and act relating to data collection, requiring the Legislative Council Bureau to enter into an agreement with a qualified consultant to analyze certain data submitted to the Legislative Council Bureau concerning traffic stops and other stops, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 395, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, and act relating to crimes abolishing the imposition of a sentence of death on a person convicted of first-degree murder, amending and repealing related statutes pertaining to the existence, imposition, and execution of a sentence of death on a person convicted of first-degree murder, reducing the sentence of any person sentenced to death to a sentence of imprisonment for life without the possibility of parole, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 46, end of Section 46, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 396, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, and act relating to peace officers, revising provisions relating to justifiable homicide, revising provisions relating to the use of deadly force to effectuate an arrest, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 404, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, and act relating to domestic violence, establishing provisions relating to the proper venue for filing an application for an order for protection against domestic violence, revising provisions relating to the information included in an application for an order for protection against domestic violence, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 409, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs, and act relating to peace officers, requiring the Peace Officers Standards and Training Commission to adopt certain regulations concerning the recruitment and selection of peace officers, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 421, introduced by the Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections, and act relating to persons with certain conditions, establishing the preferred manner of referring to persons with mental illness and persons who are deaf or hard of hearing in the Nevada Revised Statutes and the Nevada Administrative Code, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Bills ordered to general file.
Assembly Bill 435, introduced by the Committee on Revenue, and act relating to taxation, expanding the exemption from the commerce tax for persons who take part in certain events for a purpose related to the conduct of a business, and providing other matters properly named thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, end of Section 1. Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
All right, amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
The bills ordered to general file. Assemblywoman Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under order of business number 8.
Order of business 8.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Those bills reported out on second reading. I would like to move that AB 121, AB 147, AB 189, AB 202, AB 206, AB 214, AB 216, AB 392, AB 404, and AB 435 be referred to your very hard-working Committee on Ways and Means.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We go to Are we still on order business 8, Assemblywoman Biddy Thompson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under Order Business 8, I move that Assembly Bill 86 be taken from general file and be placed on the chief clerk's desk for purposes of amendment.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We now go to Order Business 12, general file and third reading.
Assembly Bill 84, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs and Act relating to wildfires, authorizing the State Forester Fire Warden to enter into certain public-private partnerships and providing other measures properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks, Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 84 authorizes the State Forester Fire Warden, with the approval of the Director of the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, to enter into certain public-private partnerships for the purpose of addressing the threat of catastrophic wildfires.
Any further remarks? There being none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 42 ayes, 0 nays. The bill has received the constitutional majority. Declare pass. Order transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 119, introduced by Assemblywomen Thomas et al., Senators Neal et al. An act relating to maternal health, revising the duties of the Maternal Mortality Review Committee and providing other measures properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 3, end of Section 3, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks, Assemblywoman Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 119 revises the duties of the Maternal Mortality Review Committee to include identifying and reviewing disparities in the incidence of maternal mortality by analyzing the race, ethnicity, age, and geographic region of the resident of mothers who experience maternal mortality. The bill also requires that the committee to cooperate with the Advisory Committee on Minority Health and Equity, Office of Minority Health and Equity of the Department of Health and Human Services in developing its biennial report.
Any further remarks? There being none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 42 ayes, 0 nays. The bill has received the constitutional majority. Declare pass. Order transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 182, introduced by Assemblyman Schultz et al., Senators Pickard et al. An act relating to crimes revising the elements of the crime of advancing prostitution and providing other measures properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks? Assemblywoman Tolles.
Yes, thank you. Assembly Bill 182 revises the elements of the crime of advancing prostitution by providing that a person who owns, leases, operates, controls, or manages any business or private property is guilty of the crime if the person knows that illegal prostitution is being conducted at the business or upon such private property due to having been notified in writing by a law enforcement agency of at least one incident of illegal prostitution that occurred at the business or upon such private property, and fails to take reasonable steps to abate such illegal prostitution within 30 days after the receipt of such written notice. This measure further revises the elements of the crime of advancing prostitution by removing provisions concerning involuntary servitude and the promotion of ongoing education for employees about illegal prostitution. It is effective on October 1st, 2021.
Any further remarks? There being none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 41 ayes, 1 nay. The bill has received the constitutional majority. Declare passed. Order transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 217, introduced by the Committee on Health and Human Services, enacting healthcare, requiring the State Board of Health to adopt regulations requiring unlicensed caregivers at designated facilities to receive certain training, requiring the person in charge of such a facility to perform certain duties related to such training, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 19, end of Section 19, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks, Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 217 requires the administrator or other person in charge of designated medical facilities, facilities for the dependent, and other licensed facilities to ensure that each unlicensed caregiver at the facility completes certain training, including training on the topic of control of infectious diseases. The measure requires the State Board of Health to adopt regulations prescribing training for unlicensed caregivers to provide care at such facilities. The administrator or other person in charge of such a facility shall ensure the implementation of best practices taught in the required training and shall develop annually, update, and provide to certain persons a written plan for the control of infectious diseases at the facility. Finally, this bill requires the Division of Healthcare Financing and Policy of the Department of Health and Human Services to post on the internet a list of nationally recognized organizations that offer free or low-cost training that meets the requirements of those regulations.
Any further remarks? There being none, Chief Clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 26 ayes, 16 nays. Bill has received the constitutional majority. Declare passed and order transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 290, introduced by Assemblywoman Howdeggy, enacting to financial institutions, revising the definition of the term fiduciary for the purposes of certain provisions relating to the business of a trust company, authorizing funds held in a fiduciary capacity by a savings bank to be swept to the deposit accounts of the savings bank under certain circumstances, imposing certain requirements on savings banks related to funds in a fiduciary account administered by a savings bank that are awaiting investment or distribution, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 2, end of Section 2, end of bill.
Are there amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks, Assemblywoman Howdeggy.
Thank you, Speaker. Assembly Bill 290 revises the definition of a fiduciary to provide that a trust company or a savings bank that acts as a custodian for an individual retirement account is not a fiduciary for the purposes of certain provisions of law governing the business of a trust company. The bill also applies to savings banks certain rules relating to bank deposits and required collateralization of fiduciary funds that are applicable to bank charters other than savings banks. Thank you.
Any further remarks? There being none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 41 ayes, 1 nay. The bill has received the constitutional majority. Declare passed. Order transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 426, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, enacting to the protection of children, authorizing an agency which provides child welfare service or its designee to request a warrant to place a child in protective custody under certain circumstances, revising the requirements for notice given to certain persons of certain hearings, authorizing the Attorney General to sign a petition alleging that a child is in need of protection, making various other changes relating to the protection of children, and providing other matters properly thereto. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 12, end of Section 12, end of bill.
Are any amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole?
There are none.
Remarks, Assemblywoman Krasner.
Assembly Bill 426 authorizes a child welfare agency to request that the court issue a warrant to place a child in protective custody if there is reasonable cause to believe that the child needs protection, but the threat is not imminent in the time it would take to obtain a warrant. The bill also sets forth certain requirements for such a warrant.
Any further remarks? There being none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 42 ayes, 0 nays. The bill has received the constitutional majority. Declare passed and order transmitted to the Senate.
Assembly Bill 430, introduced by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act relating to disabilities, revising certain terms used to describe the provision of certain services to persons with intellectual disabilities and persons with developmental disabilities, removing related obsolete terms and providing otherwise properly relating thereto. The People's State of Nevada, represented in the Senate and Assembly, to enact as follows: Section 1, end of Section 1, Section 4, end of Section 4, end of bill.
On the amendments to Section 1 of the bill as a whole.
There are none.
Remarks, Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 430 revises or removes certain obsolete terms used in statutes to describe the provision of certain services to persons with intellectual disabilities and persons with developmental disabilities.
Any further remarks? There being none, the Chief Clerk will open the roll. Anyone wishing to change their vote? There are 42 ayes, 0 nays. The bill having received the constitutional majority, declare passed. Order transmitted to the Senate. We'll now go to order of business. 15 remarks. Assemblywoman Black.
Order of Business 15.
Order of business 15.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tens of thousands of Nevadans have been out of work for over a year now due to the governor's shutdown. Inexcusably, many still have not received their unemployment benefits. I received an email last week from a constituent who reports that it took her over an hour for Dieter to accept her documents and selfie online so she could file her claim. However, Dieter is still not accepting her husband's claim, even though he has provided scanned and uploaded photocopies of his driver's license and passport through ID.me. It's bad enough that tech-savvy Nevadans are still having these problems. But what about senior citizens and low-income Nevadans who don't have computers or cell phones that can scan documents and provide selfies? As the constituent wrote me, quote, Dieter has had over a year to get their act together and failed. They only succeeded in making it harder for eligible claimants to get their benefits. What a disgrace. I agree. When will we stop accepting the mountain of excuses Dieter keeps giving us for this colossal failure and hold someone accountable for the pain and misery they're causing so many Nevadans who are suffering through no fault of their own? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Order of Business 15.
Order of business 15.
Today, I would like to read part of this proclamation that I have here, whereas the Special Olympics Nevada is dedicated to enriching the lives of children and adults with intellectual disabilities through sports, education, leadership, and athletic health. Just to highlight some of the things that I think are most prevalent on this proclamation is that the organization offers free year-round training and competition sport programs for over 2,694 athletes and growing. They compete in more than 14 competitions and 7 sports annually. It's also further proclaimed that Special Olympics Nevada's commitment to provide year-round sports training and athletic competition in a variety of Olympic-style and Olympic-type sports for children and adults with intellectual disabilities is recognized today on this Special Olympics Nevada Day. Thank you.
Assemblyman Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every year during the second week of April, the telecommunications personnel, more commonly known as dispatchers, are honored. This week-long recognition was initially set up in 1981 by Patricia Anderson of the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office in California. The intent is to celebrate and thank those who dedicate their lives to serving the public. It is a week that we should set aside so that everyone can be made aware of their hard work and dedication. While serving as an assistant sheriff at LVMPD, I had the honor of having 911 Communications Center under my command. This bureau of just over 250 employees each year answered over 3 million phone calls from the public and created 1.6 million public safety events. I saw firsthand the difficulties and challenges of such a demanding profession. One minute they're handling an audible alarm, the next maybe a child drowning, a robbery, or a shooting, all while keeping their calm, composure, and wits to do such a difficult job. It's no secret that I think National Communications Week should be every week because I truly appreciate everything they did for me during my law enforcement career and our community every day. Please join me in thanking all of the telecommunications personnel in our state during their week of recognition.
Benitez Thompson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. If we could just do a quick 1-minute recess?
1 minute recess. Assembly come back to order. Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Seeing no other business before us, I move that the Assembly adjourn until Tuesday, April 13, 2001 at the hour of noon.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.